evening, everyone. Welcome to Veterans Breakfast Club Happy Hour for Monday, November 7th. My name is Sean Hall. I'm the Director of Programming here with the VBC. And joining me, as always, is the Executive Director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, Todd DiPastino. Todd, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good evening, everybody. Happy Veterans Day week.
Happy Veterans Day week. We got a big program coming up this Friday, but I think that this program is going to be a tough act to follow, I think, tonight. We have two very special guests, Suzy and Bill Bailey. Suzy and Bill, if you'd like to wave, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us tonight. We promised everyone last week that you would get a love story tonight, and I'm sure that this will not disappoint. Suzy and Bill, they met post-Vietnam. Bill was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years. Is that correct, Bill?
8 months, 5 years, 8 months.
5 years, 8 months. I don't want to shortchange you. 5 years, 8 months. And Suzy, you were a Pan Am flight attendant. Oh, we lost your video. That's okay. We'll get you back. And you guys met. Suzy, you were wearing one of the POW bracelets. Is that right?
Yes.
Still have it on? You old heartbreaker. And fireworks ensued. Been married for how many years now?
49.
49 years. Excellent. So excited to dive into both of your stories. Before we do, we're gonna thank our sponsors, but I do want to go around the room first and just thank everyone for joining us. It's great to see you. Annette, we haven't seen you in quite a while. Sue, it's good to see you. Brad, I just saw you in person over the past weekend, so it's great to see you back on screen. Rick, and we have a lot of new names in the room as well. I have a feeling like that is our sort of our Pan Am reach. Becky, we have to say special thanks to Becky for pointing us in the direction of Suzy and Bill's story. Becky, it's so great to have you back on the program. But it's just exciting to keep collaborating with Pan Am. We feel like there were so many stories that we left on the table, even doing a two-parter and working with the Pan Am Historical Foundation for our Greatest Generation Live. I'm going to be doing a podcast with the Historical Foundation. So we just keep on finding new stories a part of this that just keep bubbling up and are just really exciting to talk about. So I should jump over quickly here and thank our sponsors. First up is D&D Auto Salvage. They are a small, they started off small. They're quite big now. They were a small hauling and used auto parts operation here in the Pittsburgh area in the late 1970s. Now they have two locations in Lawrenceville and Tarentum. They accept all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any type of job in a timely and efficient manner. They've been a longtime supporter of the VBC, and we're very grateful for that support. You can contact them for quotes and availability at dndautosalvage.com. That's dndautosalvage.com. And also, we'd like to thank tobacco-free Adagio Health, also longtime supporters of the VBC. They are dedicated to reducing and preventing tobacco use and to getting the word out about the hazards of smoking and secondhand smoke. They're all about health. So they want people to quit. They have classes, they have nicotine replacement therapy, and they have a really popular quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. And they educate people, children especially, about tobacco use from cigarettes, cigars, pipes, chew, snuff, and other nicotine products like vaping. And finally, they advocate for public and private policies that ensure healthy places to live, work, and play. You can learn all about tobacco-free Adagio Health there on their website, tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. I will also have them on the podcast, The Scuttlebutt, talking about all the programs that they offer. I'm excited to talk with them again, a great group, and thank you again for your sponsorship. And as I mentioned just a little bit ago, as our last announcement before we start into the program tonight, is that this Friday, November 11th, the 11th day of the 11th month, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., we will be on here on Zoom, same Zoom channel, same Zoom time, and we will be having every hour. We're going to have new hosts talking veteran stories. We started this last year called Vetathon. It was very popular. We want to do it again. We brought in all new hosts to come in and fill our whole day with stories of veterans. It's something that we hang our hat on, and we just want to thank everybody who is a part of that. Please join in. Join us at any time during that day on Friday. You can pop in at 11. You can watch the whole thing, or you can wait until 10. Brad, you're going to actually be one of our hosts. I can't see you on my screen, but I don't know if Todd, if you're able to ask Brad to unmute. I don't know if Brad, you want to give us maybe just a taste of who you have coming on for your hour. And I believe that is that the 9 to 10 hour that you'll be with us?
That's right, 9 to 10. And I'm staying up past my bedtime just for this vetathon. And I'm going to have a good friend, Tom Hastings, a Marine who was involved in Operation Praying Mantis, which many of our viewers may not know about. But in 1988, the U.S. and Iran got into some combat operations. And Tom was responsible for conducting a helo-borne assault onto an Iranian oil platform. So he's going to tell his stories and bring some pictures along. And I think it'll be a good story to listen to and reflect back on that time in history.
Bill Bailey, I saw your eyebrows go up. So that tells me that sounds like that's interesting. So, yeah. So yes, please, everyone, feel free to join us at any time during the day. We're going to have stories just like that throughout. Incredible speakers, Vetathon this Friday from 11 to 11 Eastern time. Todd, any announcements before I get started?
Yeah, we have a lot of, this is a very filled up Zoom room, as it should be, because this is such a wonderful story with two wonderful people, an inspiring story, an educational story. So please do, as always, if you are new here for the first time, if you're joining us for the first time, let us know, say hi to us in the chat. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. I have muted everybody. I can unmute. Sean and I have all the power here. We could unmute people whenever we want. We've learned the hard way that we keep people muted for the first few minutes of the program. And pretty soon I will turn off that restriction and you'll be able to unmute yourselves. But until then, if you want to introduce yourself or have a question, I'll tell you the reason that we have to mute people is because I'm looking at somebody like Chuck Burrow. There he is, troublemaker, Marine. I knew he was going to be on tonight, and I just thought, we're muting him because we never know what he's going to say. So thanks, Chuck. Good to see you, Sarge.
We only just started letting Marines join us, so baby steps into the kiddie pool, and And I know that we have a big birthday. Hopefully this person is in the room. There's a 105-year-old that I believe is joining us tonight. 105. Wow.
105 today.
Yeah. So Scott Masters, thank you for inviting him. I believe he'll be joining us maybe around 8 o'clock. So everybody, it's a surprise birthday party. So everybody, we have to sing for him whenever he arrives. Well, diving into the program, Suzy and Bill, thank you again so much for coming on. How are you both doing tonight?
Right. Doing well. Right.
Wonderful. I have some slides, of course, to show that you've sent me, Suzy. I want to start with your story, and it's real. A softball question to start is you were a Pan Am flight attendant, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
How did you get involved in this? And almost just a quick follow up to it is, how did you then decide that you were also going to fly in and out of Vietnam?
I did not fly in and out of Vietnam.
You did not? Okay, I had thought you did.
I heard that program, the last one. It was wonderful. Now, I was not based on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was overseas living in Germany when I saw the Pan Am building downtown Frankfurt. Mm-hmm. And I was in between. I had my BA in anthropology. I grew up overseas. So I wanted to go work with Leakey in East Africa. And I was told I had to have my PhD. So I went to University of Hamburg. My parents were living in Hamburg at the time. My father was State Department. And enrolled at the University of Hamburg for their advanced degree. And my German was just not good enough for the literary German taught at the university level. So I was a translator at Rhein-Main Airport for a while, Air Base, and worked for the USO there. And then one time I was walking in downtown Frankfurt and I saw the Pan Am building and I said, maybe I can do that. So I went in and they said, the last day of hiring is tomorrow in Berlin. And so, bring your passport and catch this plane. So I did that, and I got on the plane and sat in the jump seat and was all excited. And when we arrived, when we landed in Berlin, they told everybody to get their passport. So I looked in my purse and I had forgotten my passport. So everybody got off the plane, and the police came on and got me and escorted me, the East German police, and just scared the dickens out of me, which I think they enjoyed doing.
How old were you at this point?
24, 23.
Okay.
23, 24. And so I told them to call my father at the American Consulate General, and they said, no, they weren't going to do that. And then they looked through my purse and they saw my military ID card, because diplomats also got the military ID cards. And so they said, okay, that's good enough. So I went to the interview, and it was interesting because a lot of the girls, this was in 1971. I'm trying to think. And anyway, I went in and spoke with the guy, and he said it looked good and he'd let me know. I found out I was hired. And then I arrived in Miami in January of 72. And I saw a lot of the girls wearing these bracelets. And I said, what's that everybody's wearing? And they said, well, we still have prisoners of war and MIA in Vietnam. We want to raise the consciousness of our passengers and people that ask about it. And I said, well, that's a very worthy thing. I would like to do that. And so I sent my $2.50 to Viva, Voices of Vital America, and got my bracelet. Says Lieutenant James W. Bailey.
So you got this bracelet of his name well before you met him.
Correct.
Okay. And I want to get to that, but there was a lot of things in your story that I also wanted to have questions on, is that you did not come from a military family, though your father worked with the State Department. Is that right?
Yes, diplomatic corps. But I grew up overseas.
Okay.
So we were educated with the military, we were able to use the commissary and PX, and we had military ID cards.
So the military wasn't something that was sort of separate from your family life. It was something that was ingrained. There was an idea of service growing up in a way.
Right. My father served.
Your father had been in during World War II. He was
okay.
warrant officer in World War II.
Okay. And so when you decided to join Pan Am, what were the guidelines to becoming a flight attendant? Because I know that it was a little backwards at that time.
It was. I had not read what the requirements were, because I hadn't put much thought into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of lucked out that I had them all. I spoke German, maybe not good enough for a PhD, but I spoke enough German. And there were weight limits that I was thin in those days, and height. But
you had to be single?
I had to be single, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think while I was flying, they changed that. Yes, because I could have flown after I married Bill, but I would have had a long commute. And I went back to college instead. I got my MA in speech and language pathology.
Mm-hmm. Was this a normal picture that all the flight attendants had to take, like get in the engine and do the pose?
Our cheesecake.
Yeah.
Norma Calvelage, my dear Pan Am roommate, she was in my training class, and Miami was our first assignment, and you're allowed to transfer every 6 months to a different base. And we decided we wanted to do that to see as much of the world as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And after Miami, they had just opened the Houston International Airport. And Norma is from Texas. So we went there and we flew the Central America route for 6 months. And then we transferred to London, and we were in London 6 months. And then then she quit and got married, and I flew for out of DC.
Someone put into the chat here, Irene, I love your outfits, so darling. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because you also are wearing your scarf tonight. I do have a picture of the scarf here coming up.
Yes, the scarf we wore. If we had a blue winter coat, right now I'm wearing my Galaxy Gold uniform. We also had a blue one that we could wear interchangeably. And the blue in here, we had a blue winter coat, and we'd wear the scarf sort of under the collar of the coat, you know, or in the warm weather, sometimes we tied it to our purses, to the back of our purses.
Did you like the outfit?
Loved it. It was very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we felt smart. We dressed conservatively, and Pan Am was the only airline I would have flown for.
Really? Why is that?
It just I just thought it was more dignified, and you know, I felt everybody took pride, and
mm-hmm.
you know, it just wasn't silly. You know, like some airlines you get on, they were just kind of silly, and we were professional and took our job seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
We found this picture. Todd found this picture right before we started of the scarf. You can see that it's a sort of a map, mini map of the world here. Beautiful scarf. You can actually get these. You can see over here the Pan Am symbol. These are on auction. Todd, did you put in a bid?
Yes, I am bidding right now as we speak. So if I'm not involved, it's because I'm bidding on the scarf. My wife's going to love it.
Yeah. So Suzy, you know, Pan Am, did you know that Pan Am was flying these R&R flights and doing so much in Vietnam?
I regret to say I did not know that. And I think part of it was I went to college in the States, but you know, I went to Germany after that, and we didn't have a TV set. You know, I didn't watch all the guys coming home or anything. And it wasn't until toward the end that I realized that Pan Am was doing that, which is from the West Coast gals. And if I had stayed in, I probably would have, that probably would have been my request for the next base, to go to the West Coast. But I met somebody very dear before that.
Is here. So we
That's
have the bracelets here. So you get you paid the, what do you say, the $2.50?
Bob Doremus. Yes, you wrote to Viva, Voices in Vital America, and they would send you a bracelet with some information of No, I don't think there was information with that. They said if you wanted to write the family of, you could do it via Viva, and in case the family, you know, did not want to answer, but all the families did. So I wrote to his family, and I got a letter back from his mother saying, it was a form letter. We found out when he got back that he had about 3,000 letters and bracelets that had been returned. People wearing his. I thought I was the only one. But that he was
she was the only one.
That he was a basketball player, had a basketball scholarship, and he was single, and you know, just some information about him. And then in let me think, it was in 73, the very beginning of 70, it may have been December of 72, when my parents sent me the Stars and Stripes newspaper with his name circled, and that he was coming home.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was in January, right around there. And so I sent a telegram, welcome home. If you're ever in London, my roommate and I will show you around. And I got a letter from him. He said, I'm planning an R&R and going to get a Euro pass this summer, and I'd love to come see you.
Wow. So you still had not seen a picture of him?
No.
Wow. Okay, so we'll pause there. We'll rewind the clock a touch and jump over to Bill here. Bill, you were in the Navy. There's a bit of a blurry shot, but I'm guessing that's the USS Constellation on your wall.
That is.
Okay. Now, did you enlist or were you drafted?
Well, let me just bend you here for a moment. I grew up on a small farm in Mississippi. My parents were what's called dirt farmers. We had a couple of mules, a couple of horses. I used to tell kids in college and high school when I was teaching this that I have more time watching the south end of northbound mules than you have watching TV. I thought that was a good line. Anyway, so I went through college a couple of years on a basketball scholarship. I ran out of money, ideas, and joined the Navy as a cadet. The Navy at that time, with 2 years of college, you could go into the cadet program upon completion of flight training. You were commissioned as an ensign, and that's what happened with me. I actually went as a pilot selectee, but I discovered I had a problem with my eyes, so I then became a naval flight officer. Specifically, I was a radar intercept officer flying in the back seat of F-4s, the Phantoms.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the West Coast, and I joined a squadron there in 64, 65, deployed in December of 65 aboard a USS Ranger, made about 130-something missions, came back in August of 66, returned to Southeast Asia in March of 67, got shot down in June of 67 on the 183rd mission. I was very fortunate that I got to associate with two very remarkable individuals. I rode the shirt tails of one of the first of the four pilots of Top Gun. He was probably the best F-4 pilot in the Navy, and he and I were paired together during the first cruise. Mm-hmm. Second cruise, the squadron commander and I flew together, and he had been the brigade commander at the Naval Academy. Later, he went on to be a 3-star admiral. His daughter was the first Naval Academy astronaut, female astronaut from the Naval Academy. His name was Bill Lawrence. Her name was Wendy Lawrence. So I like to say, I was very fortunate that I was able to ride the coattails with some very, very outstanding individuals. Mm-hmm. All that aside, it was a very good squadron. I was shot down on our mission flak suppression airplane. We were carrying 4 1,000-pound bombs, dropping it on flak, dropped the bombs, got hit before we actually dropped the bombs, about 30 seconds. Lost all the hydraulics as we pulled off the target. Plane went into a flat spin. It was punch out immediately, capture immediately in the rice paddy. But that night, both of us were in the Hanoi Hilton. That was June 28th, 1967.
Bill, may I interrupt real quick just so I can clarify that part of the story is you guys get hit, you go into a flat spin. What's going through your mind?
Oh, shit. That's it.
Yeah, I ask a dumb question.
Actually pulling up when it lost hydraulics, we blacked out. We probably pulled 12, 14 Gs because we were probably doing 600 miles an hour at the pulling out of a 45-degree dive. Mm-hmm. And I blacked out. When I came to, the wingman was shouting, "Tap room lead, get out," over the radio. And it was obvious it was there. We were by then fairly low. I think we only spent maybe 20 seconds in the parachute. I keep saying we. I only spent 20, 30 seconds in the parachute.
At that speed, is there anything about getting it when you hit the ground? You only have so long to slow down for the parachute. Did you sustain any injuries that way?
The good thing is that I told you we probably pulled 12, 14 Gs. Mm-hmm. That was the barn door effect. And that took that 600 knots, the 600 miles an hour, and probably dropped it to 400 miles an hour by the time I punched out. That's the good part of that. Mm-hmm. So I did not have any residual injuries rather than sprained back and scrapes and stuff like that from the ejection. Very fortunate. So like I say, then I was in Hanoi. I spent 5 years, 8 months up there. And as we get into it later, if people have questions about that I'll be happy to discuss that. But I'm just going to go on, brush on to the fact that I did come out, and when I got out, I discovered that Suzy had said, "Welcome home," and my brother-in-law said, "You want to mark this one, buddy." So I did, and as she said, we met up in June of 73. I got out February the 14th of 73, and I spent a few months there doing a number of things, convalescence and debriefing, and just spent some time with my folks.
And you stayed in the Navy.
I stayed in for 15 more years. I had 10 years then. I went back to the University of, I'll fast forward real quick and then we'll get back to us. But I did go career-wise. I stayed in the Navy, went to the University of Mississippi, complete my undergraduate degree, then went to another, that's BF 74, where I was in flight status, lieutenant commander then up to the Naval War College, went into the Pentagon, some there. And I wound up, my last duty assignment was executive officer of the ROTC, UNC Chapel Hill. That was a very dream assignment. And then I got into secondary education down here in Anderson. We've been here for 32 years now.
Why did you stay in?
Well, two reasons. One, the Navy said you could do anything you want to within reason. So I wanted to complete my education, and they paid for it. And two, by that time I had 10 years in. And the other reason is I love the Navy. I love flying. A little blip in the road, but in spite of everything, probably some of the best times of my life were the relationships that I had while a POW, because there's no stronger bond than combat. And when you're living with people like we were, with a common enemy there, and just trying to struggle through the torture and the solitary confinement and the isolation, it's 3.5 years before I was able to contact my family or have any contact.
Did they know you were alive though?
They thought I was.
Wow.
Not until about a year after I was shot down, they got word that I was alive.
Wouldn't be able to sleep. I wouldn't be able to sleep for an entire year till you get word. Yeah.
It was bad. It was bad. I really felt sorry for my parents. And the other part, just make one thing here. I never realized until I was married and had children how difficult it was on those POWs who were my comrades, who were married and who did have children. And it just absolutely blew my mind. You mentioned Alvarez earlier. Alvarez's wife divorced him while he was POW. My pilot, his wife divorced him while he was a POW. And, I don't know how people cope with something like that. Well, I do. You suck it up and go ahead. But still, I am very, very fortunate that I was not married and had no children during those period of time.
Yeah. Did you know about Suzy having the bracelet? What was the first letter that you read from her?
I didn't know about bracelets, period. Most of us, I don't think we even knew it. The POWs, the story of the bracelets really had not surfaced among us, or if it did, it was pretty much in the noise level.
Mm-hmm. Now, the first letter that you read of Suzy's, what did it say?
Well, the first thing I saw was the telegram where she said, "Welcome back." That was right after we were released, the telegram, and I read that telegram, and of course, I had a lot of things going on there. What I didn't tell you, Bess, was that I was in a group of people in between the first group and the second group that was released, and there were 20 of us released, and I was a substitute for the one of the 20 because my father was in very, very bad shape at the Veterans Hospital, and in fact, they sent me home by myself. The other 19 guys got debriefed, but I came directly to Clark and then directly on to Hawaii and to Memphis and then to the hospital, and then my father died the next day. But I did get home. I did spend 2 days or a day and a half, and I did get to see him. I'm not sure if he was aware that I was here or not, but that was a very, very strange period in my life. I was the elation of being free was mixed with the depression of losing my father immediately upon return.
No doubt. Not many Vietnam veterans got a welcome home back at that time. What did it mean to you that she wrote that in her letter?
Oh, it meant a lot. One of the things that almost all of the POWs, almost without exception, as far as I know, we all felt a little bit guilty that we were welcomed so well. And when we heard and realized how poorly the average GI was welcomed or not welcomed, would you get that picture right there? I'll show you the picture of the one to welcome home back over there. But this was just I don't know. Can you see this?
Yes.
That was a group the night I came home to Memphis. And these were the people that were waiting up till midnight to welcome me home to Memphis. That was impressive. So
they all pretty much had parades. And
yeah, we had lots of good stuff going on there. And but let's go back to the great story here. The great story is that Suzy and I did make contact with each other.
Yeah.
And in June that year, I arranged, I took a military flight, went into Germany, caught another little flight into Scotland, called her from Scotland, got in touch with her as she was briefing in a briefing room to flight back to the States. I
want to interrupt here.
Okay.
And all you Pan Am stews in the audience know how impossible that is. I don't know how we got through to the briefing room to speak to me. But did you tell him you're a POW?
I don't remember.
Anyway, in the briefing room, I have a phone call.
Bill, you pulled rank to be able to talk to her.
That's probably told him a sob story. I probably told him that her poor puppy was sick or something. Anyway, we did get in touch. She made her flight to the United States, came back the next day, and I met her. By that time I was down and I'd met her roommate and her roommate's fiance. And this is my one claim to fame, okay? When she walked through the door, I ran over to the door, picked her up and swept her off her feet.
Twirled me around.
Very first time I ever met her.
I know, it was adorable.
And that's about an hour later.
I had a feeling this is, I mean, just the joy that just oozes out of this photo. So
Remarkable.
Suzy, what are you I mean, you just took 2 flights to, across the ocean day in, day out, and you were, coming back to meet him, and what's going through your mind?
Well, I wanted to be his friend. I was a little concerned about what somebody experiencing that, if they had mental problems. That's just, my ignorance level, but I didn't think I could ever survive something like that. But I wanted to be a good friend to him. And after Bill took me and twirled me around and stole my heart, he went back in the living room, and I went into the ladies' room to wash my face, and my roommate came after me, Norma came, and she said, "That's the man you're going to marry, Suzy. That's the man you're going to marry." And
Of course, she had known
it.
me for several hours.
And I said, "No, it's not, Norma. I told you we're going to be good friends." And then we went to, it was like something took over me. I knew this was the man I was to marry. I didn't know anything about him. Our backgrounds are totally different. I just felt head over heels. I didn't care if he had problems or anything. We were just meant to be together.
Bill, how did you sell yourself to the roommate? What were you said you had to spend a couple hours with her? You guys.
Her roommate's a fascinating story. Her mother was the first female pilot in Brazil. She's Brazilian, and her father was an Air Force officer. But anyway, I love Norman. I was just myself.
Mr. Charming self. He was.
We spent, I know people might, I'll try to move a little faster here. We spent a week, and the four of us in London, and then I took off, went down to Rome. Susie went back to the States, and she was moving domiciles based. I called her a week later and I said, Susie, have you bid lines for the next week? Or bid lines for this month? She said, yeah, I'm off next week. I'm off this week, starting tomorrow. And I said, well, I'll meet you in Paris. And so I met her the next day in Paris and asked her to marry me that night.
So we had been together about 5 days in London. And then I was transferring to DC. And so so we met June 22nd. So I probably had a week or so that I had flown. And then July, the line for July, I had a week off, then I had a work week, then I had another week off, then I had a work week. So he said, do you get your line for August? I said, yeah, or July. I said, yes, I have a week off starting tomorrow. He said, I'll meet you in Paris. I said, okay. And I put my birth certificate in my suitcase. I knew he was going to ask me. And he was very wise. He said, after his mother waited for him all that time, he thought that we should have a proper wedding. And I said, I agree. So since he was starting school in August to get his last 2 years, we made it for Thanksgiving break. So the day after Thanksgiving, we got married.
Yes, 73 Thanksgiving in DC and the fest. But it's been a good run. That was a whirlwind romance. And no way, I wouldn't advise it to anybody, but it worked for us.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up some pictures here that you have that you sent me today that you have up and around your mantle and whatnot. But real quick, Susie, you knew he was going to ask. Bill, did you have a ring already?
No, we waited till we got back to the States to pick out a ring together.
So Susie, did it feel like you were just caught up in this whirlwind of like, wow, like I just met this person who I only sort of knew of through a letter and just stories, but then like just meeting him in person, that had to have been something that just sparked so much.
It did. He was just so real and so calm, and he's just such an amazing person, very intelligent. And those 5 days together, I just saw a lot, and I just knew he was the one.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was very romantic. So in Paris, I would have just wanted to get married right away. But I think it was wise that we waited. It was a very nice wedding. Very nice wedding.
Bill, you went through this just ordeal in Vietnam, a really long time. And was it part of this was just grabbing life by the horns afterwards? Did it feel just kind of like, I'm going to take everything that I can get because I had no idea what the next day was going to bring, the next hour was going to bring for such a long time?
My thought was this, there is no bad, nothing is bad. Nothing is bad. I enjoyed everything, even the mundane thing from just the sipping a cup of coffee was just such an immense pleasure after that. And that was, I guess that was the best thing I can say. And I was really pleased. I had a sense of pride. I grew up in a segregated South in Mississippi where the situation for blacks in 1960 was dismal. And by 73, there was immense progress made in racial relations in the United States. I'm not saying that it was, I'm just saying the delta between 1960 and 1973 in Mississippi was astounding.
Mm-hmm.
And as a member of the armed forces, serving with Afro-American sailors and flight crew, I changed. I really was probably, as a young man, I was the product of the South. At the time I met Suzy, I was a completely different person.
I'm sure that everything that you had gone through from the time that you enlisted all the way up until that moment, so many things had happened and transpired in your life that how could you not be changed?
Right.
Yeah, it's I did ask him 2 questions after I said yes. But
After you said yes.
I said yes, yeah. But I wanted to know if he was prejudiced. That was, and maybe I asked that before during the week or something. Being from the South, and I'm just, and he said no. He's told me his background. He said absolutely not. And the other one is, do you want children? He said yes. I said okay, you pass.
We'll get to that picture. Annette Grunseth, you put in the chat. Do you still have the original telegram? I'm guessing the original letter that you sent.
No, I don't. It might be somewhere out at the farm. I made these shadow boxes when he got back. There's a letter from his parents in there that they had sent him, and a packet of cigarettes. Now here's the thing, they hardly had anything to eat, but they gave him cigarettes. He said right today. Yeah. Bill.
My back is killing me. I have a problem. You can tell. I just got to stand up.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, he put his back out a couple days ago. I think when he ejected from the plane, the doc said it compressed his spine. So he does. I mean, he really does pretty well. He plays golf 2 to 3 times a week, but if sometimes makes the wrong move, and so for 2 days he's been laying down a lot. But he'll be right back.
Not a problem. Well, let's get to the Brad. I see your question in the chat. We'll get to that whenever Bill rejoins us. Let me pull up some of these pictures here. I'm guessing these are just shelves and different things that are around your house.
Yeah, we're in Bill's office now. The Navy calls it the I Love Me room. Where they got, and that's my hat and his hat.
The hat is I don't know. It seems to me the hat is almost more iconic than the scarf.
That's a great hat.
Yeah.
It's a great hat, but I'm going to tell you something that makes no sense at all. Get it? Okay, I weighed 115 or 112 when I was flying for Pan Am. I won't tell you what I weigh now, but you would think the hat would fit me, wouldn't you? I don't know if my head swelled or what.
or the hat shrunk.
I like to think the hat shrunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the original hat?
Yeah, that's it. We had a blue one and we had the gold one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this picture down below, we saw this one earlier, but who is this in the gold frame?
Oh, that's me. That's the first picture I sent Bill. So we wrote a few letters back and forth between February and June. And he said, one letter he said, do you live in a flat? Send me a picture. So Norm and I are saying, do you think he wants a picture of the flat? She said, no, I think he wants a picture of you. So I said, that's the picture I sent him. And then
oh, had you sent him a picture of the flat, that's what we would have done in 2022.
I could have sent a picture of the flat and then just made him wait.
I'm just going to stand for a few minutes. I walk for a minute or two, but I still need to stand.
It's not a problem. Not a problem. You be comfortable, Bill. We're happy to just have you a part of it. So you can see here, I can flip over to here. This is a really wonderful photo here in the center.
Just was being released and was being welcomed by who is that? What rank?
Air
Force Colonel.
Mm-hmm.
You see
that's
prisoners in the back. Is the guards in the background.
What was that moment like, Bill?
Oh, it was just elation. But we were still afraid, a little bit afraid that we weren't going to make it happen until we were airborne.
Yeah.
Training as soon as the airplane left their ground.
Yeah. And this, you might recognize that face. Nixon.
Yes. And by that time, my son was there, and I always tease him, when you met the president, you cried.
What did he say to you?
Oh, I don't remember.
It was a reception at the White House at the Rose Garden for POWs. So he was very generous and let me.
That was a few years ahead of then, Suzy. This was later. I will tell you a story here, just a quick story. The veterans will enjoy this. We did have a reception at the White House about the summer after we got back in '73. And while I was there, I walked around to the front part of the White House, and Jimmy Stewart was standing by himself there. Jimmy Stewart is my hero. I don't know if you guys know this, but Jimmy Stewart was a colonel in the Air Force, flew in World War combat. So in addition to being one hell of a movie star, Stewart is the real article. I felt like I knew a little bit about Stewart, and he's a little bit of a loner, and I thought he probably just wanted to get away from the press of people in the White House, all those POWs stuff. But I couldn't pass it up. So I walked up and introduced myself and chatted with him for 5 minutes. That was a high point of my whole.
Well, like you said, there's nothing bad. So why not? Why not? What did you say to him?
I don't remember. I told him how much I admired his military service. I knew that he had been through combat in Germany in World War II and B-17s. And I said, I appreciate you being here tonight, and I appreciate all you've done. So I was thanking him.
And this is, I believe, one of the shadow boxes. What is this? The Fighting 74.
That's the second fighter squadron I was in when I got back. I was in VF 143, the first squadron. I was in Fleet Squadron, and the next Fleet Squadron was Fighter Squadron 74.
Is this the bracelet?
That's the bracelet I wore in there. Yes.
I received over 1,000 bracelets back. A lot of people wore those bracelets, including Suzy's aunt.
Yeah.
She, by coincidence, she got one.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. So people would find out that you were freed and you were back here, and they would take the bracelet off and mail it back to you?
This group sent out a letter when we all got back and said, you don't have to, but you might consider sending your bracelet and then a letter to your POW and let them know that you wore it for 6 months, whatever, etc. And as I stated earlier, I got over 3,000 letters and over 1,000 bracelets from people who had worn my name on it, and I had no idea that it was that wide spread. But
and he wrote, sent form letters to a lot of books. There's so many, but the single gals got their own letter, handwritten.
Charmer.
There was no one or two of those. But it was a wonderful time, and since then I've had a wonderful life. We had one tragedy. Our second child died, only 2 days old. We have 3 children now, and they have wonderful careers. My oldest son went to.
That's us with our 5 grandchildren, 6 grandchildren.
Yeah.
The oldest son has 5 of those children, and then the little boy on my left is my youngest son's son. That's Hunter.
Yeah, the oldest son is he went to the Naval Academy, and then he crossed over to the dark side, went into the Marine Corps. But he saw the light after 7 years, went back to the Navy, got a medical degree, and that's when he and Alvarez's son were both in the same med school, Eustis. He is an orthopedic surgeon out in San Diego. So if any of you guys listening, any of you veterans listening, you need some work done, he's a pretty damn good orthopedic surgeon out there in Balboa Naval Hospital in San Diego.
And that's the oldest, James. There, can you see the picture?
Let me stop my share, and there you go.
Yeah,
and
10 years younger. 10 years younger is his younger brother. Both of them are redheads. Red Martin, if you're on, you're like that, huh? Anyway, he's works up in Raleigh-Durham area, and he's works as a supervisor of medical trials stuff.
Tell me what he did in the Navy.
He was in the Navy. He was 8 years in the Navy, and he flew the P3s and P8 patrol aircraft there. My daughter is married to an Air Force. We got a lot of military around here. My daughter is married to an Air Force major, and he's on exchange duty with the Royal Air Force, and they're living in Bath, England right now.
Well, that's her
That's their wedding picture.
Wedding picture, yes. That was a year ago. And a little over a year ago.
Bill,
No.
despite the fact that you went through such an ordeal during Vietnam, what advice did you have for them when they decided to enlist?
Nothing. I did not push one way or another. In fact, most of their life grew up in a non-military environment. By the time I retired from the military and we moved to Anderson, which was 32 years ago, only one of them had really, and also the last duty station was ROTC at Chapel Hill. So they never had much of a military influence. So there was no pressure on them one way or another. It just worked out that way. The funny story is the oldest son, he had no interest at all in being in the military, but we went to a POW reunion out at Colorado Springs, and we had a tour of the Air Force Academy. He was between his junior and senior year in high school. So the tour of the Air Force Academy convinced him, says, hey, I think I'd like this. So he came back and applied for the academies, and he got appointments to the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy. And I advised him to choose the Naval Academy, of course. So he did.
I'm interested in this. What form was this? DoD International Flight Plan.
This is a great story. Okay, you tell them. Oh, it's so great.
Well, I told you my father had been very sick. So the military flew me by myself. All the other POWs came out in groups, but they flew me by myself from the Philippines to Honolulu and then on to Memphis. And this is the flight plan by Air Force pilot by the name of Red Martin. We didn't know about this until about a year or so ago. The story about Suzy was in one of the publications, the Pan Am publications.
Mm-hmm.
And this lady,
Arlene,
Arlene
his wife.
read this, and she and her husband started talking, and her husband said, I know that guy. I may have it a little bit wrong here, but he says, I flew him out. And so they got in touch with us, and he kept a copy of the I don't know what you call it in the Air Force, but the flight plan. And he gave me that copy of it. Isn't that neat?
He framed it and everything. So Arlene, his wife, was a Pan Am stew. And then, she married Red Martin. And then she saw the article and showed it to him.
And I think I heard someone say they're on tonight.
And yeah, aren't Red and Arlene on with us tonight here on Zoom?
Are they? Yay! Hi, mwah, mwah.
I believe so. I know I saw an Arlene earlier.
Oh, great.
So the world's a small place in many respects, isn't it?
Yes, we're here.
Hey,
watching.
Arlene and Red.
Arlene.
Hi.
Hello from Tucson.
Oh, it's so good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you too.
You have to
Red,
come out.
what do you remember of this, Red?
Well, we were just a couple of kids in those days, and Bill and I had been in Vietnam at the same time, but didn't know each other. He was a naval aviator, and I was in the Air Force, and I knew about his shoot down, but did not know him personally. And at the time, I was with the Tactical Air Control Center, and we kind of kept tabs on what was going on in the world over there. And When I left Vietnam, went to flying school, wound up flying transports, happened to be assigned to a squadron that was at Clark when the POW release was announced, and happened to be in the right place at the right time. And took Bill from Clark to Honolulu, his first steps on U.S. soil in 5.5 years. The one story that I recall most was my loadmaster said, "Your passenger wants to come up to the cockpit." And Bill was my only passenger, and he was accompanied by a medical team who didn't think that was the right move. And I thought after 5.5 years of where Bill had been, I was not going to say no. So we brought him up to the cockpit, put him in the jump seat, put a headset on him. He was an aviator, and that's where he belonged.
That's right.
So, and he, I recall, beyond the conversations we had, he spent a lot of time looking out at a beautiful, clear night sky. And finally asked him what was the particular attraction, and a reminder that it was the first night sky he had probably seen in 5.5 years without anything to obstruct the view. Very touching.
Yeah.
But we
Wow.
got him home, and the rest is history. And it's a great, I find myself as a bit player in an epic love story. Yeah. And pleased to be a part of it, and pleased to see both Suzy and Bill sharing that story with the world, because this is a world that needs love stories.
Yeah.
You have that right.
I know you and Arlene have a beautiful story too.
Mm.
Everybody
Well,
does.
Let's get back to yours.
Well, Red, I still have one more question, because I'm thinking of, and Claire Christensen says in the chat, says, "Hi, Arlene and Red." So, you know, we're touching a lot of bases and a lot of souls tonight. But Red, I'm remembering a couple weeks ago, I was at an event at the Soldiers and Sailors Historical Museum here in Pittsburgh, and talking there was an astronaut and a Medal of Honor recipient. And I think this was the first time, besides Zoom, that I'd ever met someone who was wearing the Medal of Honor. And to me, it's like, you know, I wouldn't have thought anything else of this gentleman had I just met him on the street. But he walks up to me wearing a Medal of Honor, and there was something very different, a very different aura around him. And understanding his story before I had met him certainly gave me that. But though Bill didn't have a Medal of Honor around his neck, you knew he had gone through something in Vietnam. What did you experience in that flight? You knowing that you're going to sit with him for a while and chat with him and have this opportunity to really talk to somebody who had been through something.
My first thought was we were the same age, essentially. And it was just a brother from a different part of the military experience whose circumstances in the beginning were much worse than mine, but we both wound up where we wanted to be after it was all over. One quick observation on your Medal of Honor. I know little about them, but it always seems they are around the neck of ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. And that's one of the great qualities about that particular presentation. Yeah.
It's the nail on the head. That's the nail on the head, Red. And what made you keep this particular flight plan and then send it on to Bill?
I attached a great deal of significance to that particular mission for me. It was one of 3 that I was scheduled to fly. I was to be on the very first airplane going into Hanoi, Gia Lam. And as the North Vietnamese kept delaying the activity, there were opportunities for the powers that be to start shuffling around to make sure that we had a sense of balance in the crews and squadrons and the like. So I wound up as the ground spare first day, and we were ready and cocked, as they say, to go. And all of the airplanes that launched successfully and returned, so there was no need for us to launch. The next day, I was the airborne spare. spending 9 hours over North Vietnam in a holding pattern that I will never forgive them for putting me in. And when the next day I was to be number one going north, and they said, no, we got a higher priority mission, and that was to bring Bill home. That significance to the mission to me was Bill. It wasn't the airplane. It wasn't the number assigned to the mission. He was the important part of that mission. And I was just the steward of that paperwork, in my view. And after 35 or 40 years, I thought it really belonged back in his hands. It was his record, not mine. And I'm pleased that he has it. And, enough said.
Red, it occupies an honored place in our house.
It does.
Thank you, sir.
Brothers and
Go ahead, Susie.
they're brothers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to pause real quick, the story here for our listeners for sort of a station identification, a station break. I'd like to thank everyone again for being here. We are the Veterans Breakfast Club. Our mission is creating communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. Certainly a lot of that inspiration happening tonight. A couple announcements for our upcoming programs or programs that currently are happening. Again, we have Vet-a-thon happening this Friday from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Be there or be square. Where did that phrase even start? I don't even know why it popped in my head. But next Monday, we have Top Gun. I'm so excited for this program as well, because anybody that knows me or has heard me talk about fighter jets, that's on my bucket list. I just want to fly in one. Bill, if you still fly, please take me up in a fighter jet. But we're going to talk with Evan Warner, a Top Gun pilot, next week about his experiences with Top Gun. And we're going to talk about Buzz in the Tower next week. Super excited for that on Monday night. Todd, would you like to introduce the next Tuesday's Greatest Generation Live?
Yeah, the 80th anniversary of the death of the 5 Sullivan brothers is coming up next week, next Tuesday. And on that day, Glenn Flickinger is going to lead us in a conversation with several people who are experts on the Sullivans. It's going to be the grandson of the captain of the USS Juneau. We're hoping to get Kelly Sullivan, granddaughter of one of the Sullivan brothers who died in World War II, talking about her father and her uncles. We're going to get the curators from the Sullivan Museum in Waterloo, Iowa, joining us. So it'll be a wonderful conversation about this important and tragic episode from World War II. That'll be next Tuesday, November 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
And this is our current issue of our VBC magazine. As you can see, this one features Sandra Ortega. She was the first Black female that was commissioned by Eisenhower into the Air Force. She was on a previous episode of Happy Hour with us. We spent more time interviewing her and getting her story. Todd wrote up a beautiful piece that's the feature of this particular magazine. This magazine is free. It comes out quarterly. If you don't get it, that means we don't have your address. All you have to do is send your address to us at todd@veteransbreakfastclub.org. You will receive this in the mail. It's a wonderful, 32 pages of veteran stories. And Todd, we also have a pretty special one that sort of came to us at the last second that as we were going to print, right?
Yeah, Paul Kircham, 102 years old, wrote a 17-page letter to our very own Henry Shepke, a 15-year-old in Madison, Wisconsin. Bill Bailey, you'll be able to identify with his story. He survived the Bataan Death March and was a POW of the Japanese from 1942 until the end of the war. He's still alive. He lives in Arizona. He's 102 years old. And he wrote about his experience, but also about how he found it somehow within himself to forgive his captors. I don't know how that worked. I don't know if you ever faced that challenge, but Paul did, and he wrote about it, and we published the letter in our magazine.
And one other quick is that today's Monday, so it's always a new episode of the Scuttlebutt, the podcast that I host for the VBC. That came out today. So you can see there, can grappling martial arts heal trauma? A previous guest of mine, Adam Zafuto, who was an Afghanistan war veteran, talked about during our conversation how he got into grappling martial arts and how he has, it really just made him feel better. In this conversation, we were talking about psychedelics, how he was working through that with his trauma, but also grappling martial arts. He connected me with a friend of his, Timothy Kim, who started the Knife Hand Company, a really wonderful nonprofit whose mission is connecting veterans with grappling martial arts studios so that they can experience the healing effects of grappling martial arts. Not something you'd necessarily think of on the first go of like, I could go do that and that could sort of help me out. But what he talked about was the one-on-one exchange in grappling, and that whenever he as a veteran, Timothy Kim, grapples with another veteran, he's like, I just know that they're getting things out on the mat. He's like, they don't even need to talk about what they're going through, but we get it out on the mat and it makes him feel better. It was a really wonderful conversation that I had with Tim. So we'll put the link to the Scuttlebutt in the chat. Please take a look at it if you'd like. And also the Knife Hand Company, they are a Pittsburgh nonprofit, recently just started. So I'm excited by what Tim has coming up and what he has in store. And we have many more exciting episodes of the Scuttlebutt coming up in our season 7. And I think is that all of our announcements? We still have a blood drive going on, Todd?
Well, I've never heard of grappling martial arts. Where I come from, we call it wrestling. And so they were wrestling. Wrestling helps with PTSD. We have Irene Harrell with us. Irene is a young, aspiring writer. She is eager to interview Vietnam veterans and other veterans. Irene, are you still with us here?
She is.
Yes, I am.
Hey, Irene. Irene is working on a book, and she's been doing a lot of interview with veterans. Irene, I just thought I'd let you give your pitch and invitation to be interviewed if you are a veteran.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Yeah, I am writing a kind of historical fiction novel about Vietnam veterans, and I've done a lot of reading about Vietnam and have watched movies about Vietnam. But I thought, while that's great reading and learning about Vietnam, there's nothing better than actually talking with Vietnam veterans and getting to hear their experiences. And I've had the wonderful privilege of talking to several Vietnam veterans, including one Korean veteran, which was really wonderful talking with him and just hearing their stories. And one Army Vietnam vet who I interviewed, that was the first time he ever opened up about his time in Vietnam. And I just felt so honored that he trusted me with that information. So yeah, if any of you are interested or know anyone who might be interested, you can, I can put my contact info again in the chat if you want. You can call me, send me an email if you want to do it anonymously or, absolutely, or over the phone, in person, whatever you prefer. I'm good with anything.
And she's a fast writer. She's a good writer too. I know. I've been reading some of the stuff she's written.
Thank you,
so
Todd.
Please do, if you're willing to have a conversation with Irene, let her know directly, or you could email me, Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org, and I'll pass the message along. Scott Masters, do we have our birthday boy here on tonight?
I am unfortunately not seeing him. Too bad. But
okay.
His wife said that 8 p.m. was a little past his bedtime, but she was going to try to get him to stay up a little bit. But
okay,
I don't see them, I'm afraid.
I'll share the picture, the collage that you sent me, though. Scott?
Wonderful.
Oh.
Yeah. His name is Lauren Weiner. He was born in Toronto on November 7th, 1917. And he turns 105 today. So he's a guy I've known forever. He's come to the school a ton. He's even coming to our Remembrance Day assembly this Friday. And yeah, it's going to be great to see him again.
Oh,
God, can you give us a bit of historical context of where he served and what he did?
Yeah, well, he's got an amazing story. His parents had emigrated from Poland. Lauren is Jewish, and he grew up in what used to be the old immigrant neighborhood in downtown Toronto. It's since been razed. And he just grew up really quite impoverished. And when the war came along, he was already 23. He was one of the first people to enlist, and he's one of the Canadians who spent 5 years overseas. He was in England for years, basically waiting to go into action, and finally got his turn a couple of weeks after D-Day. He was in artillery and served with the 2nd Survey Regiment, and he's just got some absolutely incredible stories. And I took students. If you look at the bottom right of that picture, you can see I took 2 students to visit him. I think it was February 2020. It was about a month or so before we went into lockdown. So that's the last time I saw him, and he's still doing really well.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
Hey, Lenya Jones, thank you for joining us. You're with the Community College of Allegheny County. You are involved in a project volunteering for the Veterans Breakfast Club at our in-person events. You're also doing a drive, a clothing drive, I believe, Lenya, if you want to unmute yourself and just say a few words about it.
Hi, my name is Lanaya. Yeah, I'm with CCAC. We have a leadership course, and every year we do a service project, and we decided that we wanted to do something to help out with the veterans. So many of my classmates have connections with veterans, whether it's family or them themselves or like husband, spouse, stuff like that. And we just thought that this was going to be like a really nice opportunity for us to reach out to a really wide group of people, and anybody who couldn't participate in the breakfast or anything like that. We're also doing a clothing drive because we know that there are some homeless veterans, and we thought that it would also be a really nice idea to get warm clothes, blankets, stuff like that to donate. So if any of you guys have anything that you want to donate, blankets, coats, anything like that, we have people who are going to be at the breakfast. I don't know if this is going to be too much, but feel free to bring anything. We're going to have some people, I believe, the 11th, we're going to have some people there at Duquesne. I can pass along the message if anybody has anything that they want to bring or donate or anything like that. But yeah, thank you for having us and letting us participate with your events and your cause.
We're happy to have you a part of it. Go ahead, Todd.
And Lanaya, please do put your contact information here in the chat so people can contact you if they have questions about donating.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I will put it in the chat.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for the reminder, Ron. We're going to come to you next, but real quick, I noticed that Bamboo Bob and Irene were able to connect really fast here in the chat. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that Bamboo Bob is part. They supply coffee from Vietnam. If you could purchase them through VBC's website or at a VBC event, $12 a bag. Some proceeds go to the VBC. But Bamboo Bob's here tonight, beaming in from Vietnam. Is that right?
That is correct. I'm in gorgeous beachside Da Nang, China Beach. Hello, everybody. And thank you, Sean, and thank you, Todd. It's a pleasure to join you. That's one crazy story. I really enjoyed the story. So thank you.
We always mention too that your coffee isn't just coffee. We don't just pitch the coffee, but that you really care about the mission of the VBC. You care about veterans. You've sent letters to people that we know. It's more of a it's more than customer service. It's something that means something to you.
Sure is. It really is. I was doing not very much running around and got to meet some coffee farmers, got to understand how my marketing, my US and Canadian marketing background could help connect some of these farmers to customers in the West. And it's working out very, very well. So what we've created is basically a direct trade. We didn't know it when we did it a couple of years ago, but it's a direct trade, basically taking the money from consumers in the West and getting it directly to the farmers and their families and the community around the farm, and doing as much processing and as much community development as we can right here on the ground in Vietnam. So
what is your favorite flavor of coffee?
I'm going to go with Turn Left at Khe Sanh.
Me too.
Which is an everyday coffee, which is very kind of, because it's 100% Arabica. And then once in a while, I treat myself to a coffee called Turn Left, or Sorry,
Lunch?
I treat myself to Lost by Lunch.
Lost by Lunch.
Which has a heavy hit of Vietnamese Robusta in it. And it's all there. And it's full flavor. And if you need to wake up a little bit, it'll light a
Give
fire.
you the kick. It'll give you the kick. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Bamboo Bob. Always a
Thank
pleasure to
you.
have you here with us. What time is it there?
It's exactly 12 hours from you, so 8:14 a.m. You must be 8:15 p.m., right?
It is. That's right.
12 hours.
That's awesome. Ron Gianta, wanted to come to you. You had an announcement. Our veteran in the know.
Yeah, how you doing, Todd? And how you doing, Sean? Thank you so much. And also, I just want to say to Bill Bailey, Bill, thank you so much for your service. And it's a real honor to have you here tonight and hear your story of you and Suzanne. Anyways, what I did was the VA come out with a couple of press releases. And one of them is the VA is going to prioritize delivering benefits to veterans with cancer under the PACT Act. Today, on National Cancer Awareness Day, the Department of Veterans Affairs announced that it will prioritize the processing of veterans benefit claims for cancers associated with the PACT Act. The VA will expedite these claims to ensure veterans with cancer are getting timely access to care and benefits they need and deserve. The PACT Act, as we all know, added additional presumptives as a result of being exposed to Agent Orange and other toxins. So they've increased they're increasing their staff, and so far, out of 100,000 new claims since the signing of the PACT Act, 14,000 of those were for cancer. Also, tomorrow, beginning November 8th, the Department of Veterans Affairs medical centers, that's all the VA medical centers around the country, will offer enrolled veterans a new toxic exposure screening. These screenings are a key part of the PACT Act and the new law that empowers the VA to deliver care and benefits to millions of toxic exposed veterans and their survivors. The screening is going to take about 5 to 10 minutes and begins by asking veterans if they believe they experienced any toxic exposures while serving in the armed forces. And basically, this is going to include open burn pits, airborne hazards, Gulf War related exposures, Agent Orange, radiation, Camp Lejeune contaminated water exposure, and other exposures. So again, starting tomorrow at all the VA hospitals, the VA is going to have a clinic where veterans can get enrolled for toxic exposure screenings. And those are probably two very important issues to a lot of our veterans since the PACT Act was passed in August.
Thank you very much, Ron. And I also just put into the chat as our final announcement, if you please let us know what you thought of tonight's program. I can answer a very brief survey. I think it's four questions, take you maybe 5 minutes. I put that link in the chat. It always lets us know how we're doing, how we can be better, and gives us some ideas on maybe some future programs. So please feel free to click that link and let us know your thoughts. You can be as honest as you like. And I also wanted to, again, thank Becky. Becky, I know that your mic is off and your video is off, but I was wondering if you could pop in for us. Wonderful. Becky, thank you so much for introducing us to Suzy and Bill. Becky, when did you hear about their story, and what did it make you think of, being a Pan Am flight attendant?
Well, Pan Am's long had a link with the United States military, and as an alumni of this great airline, I was writing articles for Jetwings magazine, which goes out to the flight attendants who flew for Pan Am. And I came across this story on Facebook that Suzy posted about her reunion with Bill the minute they met. And I thought, oh my goodness, look how in love they are. It was so obvious. And so I got in touch with her and asked her more about it. And we put the story in Jetwings, and it came out, and there you are. I mean, you can't resist this photograph, Suzy and Bill. And then, Arlene was reading Jetwings to Red, and he realized that he had brought Bill's flight back. And so they were able to get in touch. And that's what we do at this point in time with the organization that we're a part of is called World Wings International, and we share our stories and we put people in touch with each other and share this fantastic history that we have.
Suzy, when did you meet Becky?
Just now.
Tonight.
Just now? Tonight? I thought, wow, VBC, we're batting 1,000.
No.
Thank
We've been
you.
email friends.
Yeah. And I know, Bill, I know you had mentioned earlier in the program, you said to the Vietnam vets, or if anybody listening, if you have any questions about the time that you spent in captivity, I want to give that some space tonight too. If anybody had any questions about that, please raise your hand. I know we have a lot of Vietnam vets in the room as well tonight. But Bill, you said that you were a motivational speaker talking about resiliency. What sort of led you to being able to talk about this in that way?
Well, I'm really not so much a motivational speaker in the sense that I go out and do this, but several occasions I've been asked to speak on my experience. And I thought resiliency is probably the defining characteristic of the POWs who were there, primarily because of the length and the circumstances. And resiliency is something that we all have to some degree or another. And I think it can be cultivated just like any good trait. So by thinking about things that will help you, such as the camaraderie of your group, whatever your group is, building unit cohesion is just a phenomenal aspect of that. So the long part of it is that I try to draw that out into a 15-minute talk.
And I know, Brad, you had a question. Brad, do you want to unmute yourself if you're still with us? You had a question about Bill's impression of the U.S. after captivity. I didn't know if you wanted to ask that or ask that of Bill yourself.
Yeah, Bill, I was just wondering when you got back, I mean, things change so much from year to year, but in the time in captivity, when you did come back to the United States, what was your first impression? Was it a big shock to you? Was there anything that you remember, or was you scratched your head and said, wow, things sure have changed?
Yeah, we were like a kid in a toy store because so much had changed. Everything from dress to you name it. There was a sense in my mind, a certain sense of freedom on the part of everybody that was not there back in the early 60s. I guess clothing was supposed to be an obvious example. There was a fluency, affluency that was evident in the part of Mississippi that I grew up in, which had been a very poor part of the country. And so that was sort of the stuff that I saw.
But you were so disappointed because you missed the mini skirts.
Well, I did. I missed the height. I missed the height of the mini skirts. They're already coming down. I got it.
Bill, I've heard a couple swipes at the Marine Corps, so I've got to stand up here and ask a question. You being a backseater, being a Rio, how many times did your pilot threaten to eject you to gain some more gas and some more flight time? Did you make
none of them did that because, number one, it went both ways. You eject them too. But listen, just a small aside, behind you, my oldest son's daughter, my oldest son's wife, is the fastest woman in the Marine Corps. She won the Marine Corps marathon about 20 years ago. And and just this year she was just inducted into the Marine Corps Marathon Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So we have some Marines on the side of the family.
That's fantastic. In fact, I just ran the Marine Corps Marathon last week, and I was the only runner there that ran the first one in '76 that was back to run it again this year. So
that's wonderful.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've got a few more. I'm trying to make it to the 50th, so I can say I ran the first and the 50th. But
yeah.
Wonderful.
that's a great story, and thanks to both of you for being on tonight. I just think you've warmed the heart of so many people listening tonight. It's been fantastic just to see you and hear your story. Inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Wright, I know you chimed in here. You were an active duty U.S. Air Force pilot when the Hanoi Hilton POWs were released. Can you tell us a bit about what you remember of that time?
Well, they were running a school for the Air Force pilots who wanted to go back to flying at Randolph Air Force Base, Texas. And I went to another school at Randolph, used to have an instrument pilot instructor course at Randolph. And they were running this mini pilot training program for folks that come back from the Hanoi Hilton to get them back actively flying. So I met a number of them at that time. And then a man by the name of Jeffrey Ellis, which Bill may or may not know, was my commander when I was went back to Air Training Command as instructor at Vance Air Force Base in Oklahoma. So I had wonderful connections with folks spent time in Hanoi Hilton. And it was one of the saddest points of our visit for the VBC to Vietnam in 2018 is that we visited the Hanoi Hilton and all the concerns that we all had about the people who were incarcerated there and how they were treated. And of course, the North Vietnamese picture of it and reality were quite different.
Yes.
Yeah. I do know him vaguely, not much. Earlier, I mentioned a guy by the name of Leon Ellis, who is getting this book published, Captured by Love. 2 POWs, last name Ellis, but different person, different people. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Bill, did you ever lose hope those 5 years and 8 months you were in captivity?
I never really lost hope, but I became very despondent, yes, and depressed. I was in solitary for the first 6 months.
Oh.
And that was not a good time. I went through the initial torture, like all of us did at that point in time, and typically all of us felt lower than earthworm because we felt that we didn't do as much as we should have. And later we realized, a human body can only take so much pain, and then you're gonna do stuff. And I'll side here, just one thing. Had to talk. I talked. Who was in the squadron? I gave them names of the people who had rotated out of my squadron first cruise. Okay, just that one example. Anyway, as years went by, it did become sort of a holding pattern, and only the contact and only the camaraderie of the group saved most of us, 99% of us, from becoming very, very despondent. There were a couple of people that were clinically depressed.
Jerry Gagins, I think it's you, Jerry Gagins. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, real quick. Tell us about some of us don't know about the tap code that was going on at the Hanoi Hill.
Okay, it's really simple in that if you take the alphabet, which has 26 letters in it, and use C and K as the same one, just forget about K, just C and K, anything, then you can have a matrix that's 5 across and 5 down. So any place on that matrix by tapping 1 through 5 and 1 through 5 will give you a letter. For example, the letter B. The letter B is the second letter going across. So you go tap, 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 and that gives you a B. Okay? So you can do that. C would be tap, 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 tap. If you go on down, you got A, B, C, D, E. F is the first one on another one. And F would be tap, tap, tap. That is a tap code. And the Vietnamese prohibited us, they would torture us and they called us really loud. But when you were just tapping very low through a brick wall to somebody that's right next to you, you could get away with that. And at night, in particular, and the Vietnamese had one habit. They always took a siesta in the afternoon. And basically 99.9% of the time, from about 1 to 3, it was fair game. You could pretty much tap up a storm. So, but he kept us in touch.
Remarkable.
Yeah. So I know that we're pretty much at time here with 8:30, but I feel like the question that at least is most prominent in my mind is that, Suzy, you had mentioned that it didn't matter to you that what Bill had gone through after really getting to know him, but Bill and Suzy, how did your love help you, Bill, to sort of overcome everything that you had been through?
I said, Bill.
Well, I was just in love with her. She was everything I ever dreamed of. So I think she had more problems with me than I had with her. That just shows you that she's a better person than I am.
I'm in trouble with you. There were no problems with him having been a POW with depression or PTSD or night terrors or anything like that. And Bill he has a very positive outlook on everything. And someone at church years ago, where the sermon was about forgiveness, and someone asked him, well, Bill, if you saw one of your captors in a dark alley, what would you do? And, I'm looking at Bill, and he just looked sort of confused. Well, nothing, he did what he was told to do, and I did what I was told to do. So he didn't hold resentment towards the individual.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
That's hard to imagine. I think that's hard for most of us to imagine.
Well,
pretty high spirituality. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, you should be.
Let me just, part of this also is that the question is, do you harbor ill feelings?
Yes.
And my concept is this: why should I waste my time and energy thinking ill about someone who doesn't even know I exist anymore? That's a useless expenditure of emotions and anger. So I have tried more than anything else simply to forget about it. And that's one of the reasons I don't consider myself a motivational speaker. I don't speak about Vietnam. I mean, if somebody asks me a question, that's fine, but you'll never hear me open the topic of Vietnam.
It's not a place that you would care to visit again.
Well, that's not really true either. I was invited by the College of Ozark 3 years ago to go back with the college students to serve as a mentor. And I made a tour with these people. There were 12 of us and 12 of them. And one of the guys had been an ex-POW. The other 10 had been Marines, corpsmen, Medal of Honor corpsmen, Army helicopter pilots and stuff. And we spent 8 days in South Vietnam, where I'd never been before, other than just going in for refueling and thing. We went to battle sites all throughout South Vietnam. And then we spent a day and a night up in Hanoi. But the thing that happened with that, number one, is that the generation of Vietnamese there today, Vietnam War is ancient history. They're more concerned about their everyday economy, making affairs. They like Americans. Americans are, and part of that at some level, it probably is that we're a much better alternative than Chinese from the Vietnamese standpoint. So it was a good trip, and I enjoyed meeting every Vietnamese that I met. It was good.
He doesn't hold a grudge ever against anybody. Just a remarkable person. I sort of saw so much of that those first, few hours we were together.
Wow.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, Todd, I'd love to give the mic.
I have nothing but admiration and respect for both of you. You're such heroes, and you're so unassuming. It's almost as if you don't understand that you are heroic. And I certainly hope your children and your grandchildren know what heroes they have as parents and grandparents. I think I'm speaking for everybody just to say that we're honored just to be in the Zoom room with you, both of you, for so many reasons. What a story. The story says so much about both of you as people, about your character. And I think you've educated us, but you've inspired us tremendously tonight. And I cannot thank you enough for being willing to take time out of your lives to tell a bit of your story to a bunch of strangers here on Zoom. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and it's an honor to be part of this group. Thank you.
So before you sign off, I have a question. I'm Carol Young.
Hey, Carol, how are you? Good to see you again.
I was in a class and I just attempted to join in, but Michelle Obama said to take care of the returning vets. I'm a nurse and also a massage therapist. So I went to the Veterans Hospital to see how I could donate massages, on the chair, on your clothes. You're not taking any of your clothes off. But anyway, they gave me the runaround. They didn't answer me for a year. So I went up there and said, how can I do this? Can I do it in the hospital? So does anybody know how is there a connection to the veterans group that in San Francisco that I could set up something like in the afternoon or something when they have a clinic?
Carol, why don't you email me if you don't mind? Todd,
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Todd, TODD at Veterans Breakfast.
Wait, go slowly. Todd.
TODD.
Yeah.
At veteransbreakfastclub.org.
Is apostrophe S or just NS?
No apostrophe. Yeah, just all one word, veteransbreakfastclub.org.
Carol, that's so sweet. That's very kind of you.
I kept my nursing license for Honolulu and for California, but I gave it up because I was paying like $200 every 2 years and kept my brain going with, you have to do 30 years of recurrent training. It's almost like doing the Pan Am recurrent training, right? You got to put it in your head. So I kept that up and I said, I'm 82. What more can I learn? But I want to give back to and flying in and out of Vietnam, I'm kind of getting teary. I thought everybody was going to come home and they did it. So I just want to do something.
Carol was a Pan Am stewardess on the Vietnam flights. Carol, you are the most youthful 82-year-old I think I've ever met. So please do email me and we'll connect you to veterans in the San Francisco area.
Okay, sounds good. Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Nice to hear the stories.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you all so much.
Take care.